Hi, Grace Church and St. Martin's Kids. It's Miss Paula again, and we are continuing with our miracles of Jesus. And today's miracle is one you're probably pretty familiar with. It's the one where Jesus feeds 5,000 people. And there's a few different versions of this recorded in the Bible. Sometimes he feeds 5,000, sometimes 3,000, depending whether you read it in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, whichever gospel you read it in. Today's story is taken from the Gospel of John at the beginning of chapter 6, but I'm going to read you the Spark version because it's fun. So we're going to start with our story, and it says, Jesus feeds 5,000. It was a beautiful sunny day as Jesus and his disciples crossed the Sea of Galilee in a boat with white sails. Jesus had been healing sick people, and many more people of all ages came to see him again that day. Maybe they could hear more of Jesus' stories or see him show God's power through another miracle. When Jesus saw the large crowd of men, women, and children, he asked his friend Philip, "How are we going to get enough food to feed all of these people?" Philip answered, "I could work for 6 months and not earn enough money to buy food for all of these men, women, and children." The disciples didn't know what to do. Just then, Andrew pointed to a young child and said, "Here is a boy who has 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. It is something, but it certainly isn't enough food for all of these people." The boy looked very nervous as he said in a small voice, "Jesus, please take my food if you think it will help." Jesus took the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish that the boy offered and asked his friends to have the crowd sit down. About 5,000 people sat in the grassy meadow by the lake that day. After Jesus gave thanks to God, he blessed the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Then he shared the food with all of the people who were there that day. All 5,000 people ate until they were full. Then Jesus said, "Now let's gather up all of the leftovers." And do you know what? There were enough leftover pieces of bread to fill 12 large baskets. More loaves and fishes left over than the boy had given to Jesus. The disciples shook their heads in disbelief as they struggled to pick up the baskets heavy with food. The people saw the baskets full of leftovers and began to understand that something extraordinary had just happened. Another miracle. Jesus smiled as he heard people say, "God must have sent Jesus to us." It was a day the boy, the disciples, and all of the people would never forget. So Jesus did some amazing things, right? With that lunch of just a few loaves of bread and a couple little fish. Um, the disciples asked, "How are we going to feed this people?" And Jesus answered all of them with one boy's lunch. This miracle shows us that God can give us exactly what we need. And he can do it from places we don't even expect. You wouldn't expect to be able to feed all those people from one boy's lunch, right? Um, and that's why we can trust God to provide. God will provide us with what we need. And this is what this lesson shows. You have a couple of activities in your packet. The first one looks like this, right? And at the top it says the loaves and fishes. That's another common name for this story, right? The loaves and fishes. And this tells you where to find the story in the Gospel of Matthew. And it says Jesus multiplied the 5 loaves and 2 fish to allow the disciples to feed more than 5,000 hungry people. In the images of bread and fish below, draw or write about things that you can donate to feed the hungry and homeless in your community. So on each piece of bread and each fish, you can write something that you could donate to help feed somebody else or take care of somebody who needs things. And at Grace Church, our food pantry is very important to us, and that's one way that we can help. It's an important ministry, I should say, and that's one way that we can help to take care of people in our community. But I'm sure you can think of many different ways that you can help, like that boy helped. So that's what you do with this paper. with this paper, this is our craft for today. And what you're going to do is you're going to color the fish and the loaves of bread. Remember, 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread, and the baskets. And I've colored mine here. Here's my basket. So you can see I've kind of glued them together, but I only glued along the edge so that I could have the top open. And then what I can do is I can stick my loaves of bread in there. Boop. Put them in there. Put the fish in there. Okay, there's a fish. There's one more loaf of bread. And I got one more fish to put in there. You can put them in whatever direction you like, whatever looks good to you. Once you've got your basket full of your bread and fish, I also sent along a piece of magnet. Most of them probably have a little bit of paper left on them because these came off of old grocery lists I used to have stuck on my fridge. But they work great. So I'm going to put a little glue on the paper side of the magnet. And then there's my glue. I'll show you. There we go. Glue on the paper side of the magnet. And then I'm going to stick it to the back of my basket, like so. And then when the glue dries, I have a magnet that I can stick on my refrigerator to remind me of the story. So I hope you like that little craft. So I wanted to show you another kind of a neat way to think about today's lesson. If I look at this piece of paper here, it has how many corners? 1, 2, 3, 4. Suppose I said that I wanted to give a corner to somebody. So I'm going to cut a corner off and give it to somebody. Now how many corners do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 corners now. Wow. Okay, well, what happens if I give another corner away? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 corners now. And you can try this at home with a piece of paper if you want to. The more corners you'll cut off, you'll notice the more corners you end up with. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. And I can keep cutting corners and cutting corners, and you end up with so many corners, right? And that's kind of like what Jesus did with the bread and the fish. The more that he divided it, the more he had to give away. And not only that, but people had more than enough. Sometimes when we're hungry or we're worried or we think, oh, we're just ordinary people, what can we do? We can trust God to provide, and Jesus can use what we already have to do it, right? God used an ordinary boy and his ordinary lunch to feed all those people, and he can use you and your ordinary things to do something amazing, right? And to provide for others in marvelous ways. So I'd like to close our lesson with a prayer. Dear God, having faith can be hard sometimes. Help us to see that there is always enough when it comes to your love and care. Show us ways to help share with others and increase joy and love in all God's people. Amen. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.